morning. Good morning to all the people watching on the live stream and most especially watching on the replay. We have a very special guest today. Um, for some of you, you'll probably know Love Ajumma. You know, it's a very a lot of people are into Korean these days, and Tere Paterno-Park is based in South Korea. And she's actually promoting South Korean culture and food, particularly in the perspective of Filipino eye or palate. and we'll be talking to Tere about her journey in Love Ajuma. Paano ba nagsimula to? Paano ba yung culinary journey? My name is Anton Diaz, founder of our Awesome Planet, and our beautiful co-host live streaming in Houston, Texas, an awesome senior, Miss Nancy Lumen Reyes, known as the Adobo Queen. And we're awesome live. Please join us. No, please share this with your family and friends who are interested on Korean and the
Yes.
fans of Love Ajuma. We're awesome live now with Tere Paterno-Park of Love Ajuma. Can you do a short English short?
Hello. Hi.
Yon, sabi ni Cheska, Ajuma! Ajuma.
Hi.
Maybe,
Hi.
maybe just to start off, can you introduce yourself and ano ba tong Love Ajuma? I'm sure a lot of people who are interested in Korean food and culture, they're interested. Ano ba tong Love Ajuma? Alright.
Actually, Love Ajuma is a page that I created in with the purpose of sharing Korean food, the knowledge on Korean food, the culture, Korean culture, and the quirky things in everyday life here in Korea. So I created that page, I think more than a year ago, almost a year ago, um, out of boredom, out of siguro homesickness rin, because it's not easy to find Filipinos to hang out with. So I think the online space was where I tried to find my little home, my little home for my little Filipino me.
That's nice. What does Ajuma mean?
Ajuma is actually the Korean term for tita. It's the equivalent of tita in the Philippines. So it's the image of Ajuma is a middle-aged woman, originally 50s to 60s age. But nowadays, if you're married and you have kids, you're automatically considered as an Ajuma already, regardless of your age.
Okay. I'd like to know how you got started, no? But we'll say hi muna to all the people watching. Amanda Lee,
Hi.
Andrea, Blooming, yeah, very beautiful. Sarina, of course, Ajuma Teresa, uh,
Hi. Hi.
Annie, Go for Gold, Ajuma, and Pierre. Ang dami mo pala mga fans. To, Donna Jacinto, hello, Amanda.
Hi.
Watching from Korea, hello.
Wow.
Hi. Hi.
Kaito, um, Jane, Austria, and of course, Erica, ang Rosel. We'll say hi to them muna. And of course, Diana Paterno Magpat.
Hi to my sister.
Hi. Proud ate. And to all those people watching in Kumu, of course. So, paano ba nagsimula to, Tere? How did you got interested with Korean food or your culinary story? Let's start with that.
Well, I actually grew up in a food-loving family. So food was always a thing for us. Every Sundays, we would gather in our Lola's house as a family, and our Lola would cook food. So parang every weekend, same yung food na hinahanda. Halos same lang hinahanda ng Lola at Lolo ko. But it was really a thing until they moved to the US. And then, my dad loves to travel. He loves to take us places in the Philippines, road trips. And he's the type of person na hindi mahilig kumain sa mga restaurant. So when we travel, we'd usually like stop on the side of the road pag may nakita siyang karinderya. O, dito na lang tayo kakain, ganon. And then, he would always tell us to try to eat like the locals and eat the local food. And
Galing.
then he would tell us like stories about his food experiences, his food adventures, and yung mga little tiny bits of history and culture related sa food. So I think it's what that was ingrained in me when I was growing up. So it was very natural for me to have this liking and passion for anything food related.
That's so
Yeah,
nice.
and Korean food. Yeah, yeah.
Your dad is a total foodie like you.
Oo nga.
Yes. I would say it's my dad and his entire family is just, it's just food loving. It's a food loving family talaga. Even my cousins who are based also abroad, they're also very passionate about food.
I'm just
So
curious
I
what
think
your Lola,
that's why.
what did your Lola prepare every week that was the same?
I it was always like kare-kare and then
Wow.
dry adobo or kalyos. And we'd also have the same menus for Christmas and New Year every single year. It was the same up until my family in the Philippines. They still celebrate New Year's and Christmas together. And they still prepare the same food that what my Lola prepared when she was still alive.
Uh-huh.
So it's really keeping up the food
Oh.
traditions of her family.
Okay.
So how did you get to Korea from the Philippines?
Well, it's quite a long story, but I initially worked in Finland as a chef. I worked in Finland as a chef for almost 5 years,
Hmm.
and prior to that, I actually worked in the old Mandarin Hotel in Makati.
Yeah.
So before it finally closed down, I took my chances to work abroad. It wasn't really like one of my plans, pero some things just happen. They just happen for a reason. So I ended up in Finland, in a country that I've never dreamed, imagined of going to in my entire life. So I ended up in Finland, and I didn't even end up in Helsinki. I ended up in a smaller city in the outskirts of Helsinki. And wala masyadong mga Pinoy workers doon. And I worked there for almost 5 years. And then, syempre got a little bit homesick and tried to make friends online. So, I met my husband online. online. So, bago pa nauso yung mga Tinder. Bago pa nauso yung mga Tinder, nauna na ako dyan. Nauna na ako dyan. So, we met online and then, dated long distance for a couple years and then ended up getting married. And we decided to move to Korea after my son was born.
How does a
So,
Korean guy make ligaw?
Oo nga.
I think
Ano
Korean
nga?
guys are very straightforward. They don't have a concept of ligaw. I don't think there's a concept of
Pero di ba
ligaw.
romantic sila sa mga
Oh, sa
K-drama?
mga kay ano,
I think I think parang that's just a romanticized image of what Korean men
oh,
are.
ako.
So sorry to all the ladies hoping
Madidimistify
na
yung mga
they're all there. Sorry for breaking your hopes and dreams. But it's I think yung image ng Korean men sa mga drama is too romanticized. I mean siguro it exists but I don't think generally I don't think Korean men they're probably actually more the opposite of what they're portraying in the dramas.
So
So
Amanda said, oh nga, hindi nga daw. So Amanda also vlogs, no, in Korea.
yeah. Yeah.
What
So
what's a
so
Korean
yeah.
what's a Korean wedding like when you got married to him? Like do
Well,
you wear a
actually
gown or something?
we didn't have a Korean wedding, but if we did, it would be like held in a Korean wedding hall.
Mm-hmm.
And then normally it's really ano naman, wala nang not a lot of people do traditional Korean weddings anymore, like wearing traditional Korean clothes or having the Korean ceremony. So basically it's just a typical wedding ceremony pero sobrang daming guests talaga. But
Mm.
we had our wedding in the Philippines kasi. We had our wedding in the Philippines, just a small
Wow.
wedding.
So,
Yeah.
Talaga.
Yeah,
namanhikan
that's
din
fun.
siya. He made pamanhikan to your parents.
Well, sort of kasi parang they invited my family to Korea.
Alright.
One back in 2014. Kasi mahirap kasi it's long distance. I was still based in Finland, and then my husband was in Korea, tas Philippines. So we had to meet like in the middle. So the middle was Korea. So
Alright.
so we just all met in Korea, and then
Oo.
doon
Sabi
we
ni
just
Dayan,
met a couple of.
ouch my K-drama addict heart. Nako.
Sorry,
Talaga.
sorry na.
Wait, let's
Sorry.
share the photos. Let's share the photos para people will have a context. Then let's continue our discussion. Maybe can you
Wow,
caption it?
ganda. Ayun, that's the
That
one.
was actually shot for I shot this for the segment for Brigada for GMA TV.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
Wow.
guested I guested on a segment like a couple months
Wait,
back,
what were the
and
foods
we had a
there?
little.
Oh,
You
ano to
cook,
yung mga
Yeah,
food?
yeah.
you cook them all.
Well, I just made kimchi fried rice, and I made all the side dishes.
Okay.
Kimchi, and there's radish side dishes, and there's cucumber pickles, and then there's the shin ramyeon bokkumyeon, the one
Oh,
without soup.
so ganyan talaga kayo kumain sa Korea? Like banchan or
Well, yeah. This is basically how our table looks like when we eat
Oh,
our
wow.
meals. Oo. So marami hugasin.
Ay, cute naman
Marami
pala si
hugasin.
Mr. Park. Ay, ang cute ng kids mo. What are their names?
Thank you.
What are their
My eldest's name is Haun.
Oh,
Haun. Yeah, and then my daughter's name is Yeun.
do they speak
wait.
Yeun.
Tagalog or understand a little?
No, they only know like when I get angry. Pag sinasabi ko, hay nako, or pag kaya natalisod ako, and they say, aray ko, they also imitate that. Or
Okay.
they say, ang kulit mo, like that. So, but they don't really know a lot of Tagalog words.
May nag-comment si Elf Ann. I learned and tried to make banjans because of OG Ajumma.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, ito pa. So ito yung mga ano to? Early days ba to?
Yeah, this was when we were still dating. So when
Mm.
we dated, mahal makipag-date kasi I had to fly. I had to fly to Korea to date.
Nasa Korea siya and you were in
We were
Finland.
we were in a long distance relationship for almost 4 years.
What?
'What?
And
Oh,
we saw each
Korean
other
drama
lang
lang.
like we saw each other lang siguro mga twice. Most na yun twice a year. But it was like once a year. Pag may vacation ako, like summer vacation or winter vacation. So I fly. I try to fly every chance that I get. So mahal makipag-date. Mahal
What
makipag-date.
finally made it permanent?
Oo, yes.
Well, we decided to get married kasi parang it's hard eh. Like you face the reality that you can't do long distance forever. So we decided na no, if we're gonna do this forever, the might as well get married, di ba? So we got married, and then we actually we were long distance pa rin even after we got married. Kasi
Why?
we had to fix the visa. I
Ah,
got pregnant right after kasi. So it was a honeymoon baby. I got pregnant right after. So, and I was still working. I was still working back then.
mm-hmm.
So, so na-postpone yung mga plans to move to Korea or ano. So, I had to give birth to my first child first before finally moving to Korea.
So ano tong kinakain nyo dito? It's like
We're eating makchang. It's large intestines. It's
Oh,
pork
oh,
intestines. So isaw bilog.
so that's a
Isaw
winter food.
bilog.
Di ba
You
yung-
can eat it any time of the year. It's one of Korea's really delicious barbecue food. It's actually
Barbecue.
one of my favorites talaga. So you grill
Talaga?
it on a
Wow, gusto ko matikman yan.
mm,
Oo, grabe.
it's
Ano yun, may taba yun sa gitna, ano? Sorry.
Oo.
Yun doon sa bilog
Sorry.
na gano'n,
yeah.
yung taba. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Woohoo!
That's all the fats. So all the fats and yeah, so sarap talaga siya. It's impossible not to
Talaga?
like. It's impossible
Now,
not to like.
if the people want to order it in Manila, how will they? What will they say?
Wala yata to sa
Um
Manila eh.
Malay mo,
it's hard. It's actually hard to
It's
find,
hard.
but back in 2000, before 2010, siguro mga 2006, 2007, when I was interning in Hyatt, the old Hyatt in Manila, I was able to find a restaurant that actually served makchang and kopchang. So
uh-huh.
Mm.
intestines, so innards. But it was a really small restaurant na Koreans lang talaga yung kumakain. It didn't even have an English signage.
Ah.
So I was lucky to have found it that time. Pero I don't know if it's still there in Ermita.
Well, you know,
Pero mahirap
viewers,
kasi.
yeah. That's a challenge to the viewers who are,
To the
gusto
viewers.
nyo mag-food trip talaga. You have to look
Oo.
for that.
By the way,
Yeah.
Izzy, Mama and Papa are watching. Isabel.
Hi, my sister. Barangay.
Okay, let's continue with the photos Ito, ano tong food na to? Ano tong
This is actually sundae bokkum. Sundae is actually Korea's blood sausages.
Oh.
Wow.
So blood sausages.
Wow.
So like how every country has a version of blood sausage.
Oo.
If you go to
Blood ng
Europe, they
ano?
also have blood sausage.
Pork
It's pig's blood.
Beef
Pig's blood.
Okay.
Pork, and then it's stuffed with noodles. Well, depending on the region din kasi. Some regions have it like they stuff it with sticky rice, some stuff it with vegetables, some stuff it with noodles. But for this one, it's stuffed with noodles. So glass noodles and some vegetables and pork blood.
Ang sarap. Gusto ko na kumain ng Korean.
Yeah. What was that you were drinking there? Is that beer or
it's plum. It's plum wine.
plum wine?
Plum wine. Yeah, meshilju. It's also super good. Like I don't know if there's plum wine, Korean plum wine in the Philippines, but I think there should be.
You know what? There are
If
so
you can
many
find one.
Korean places already, very sophisticated na doon. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have, although I don't know if popular to. But wow. Ano lasa ng anong lasa ng blood sausage nila? Is it like dinuguan natin?
Well, yung dinuguan kasi natin kasi 'di ba hinahaluan ng vinegar. Pero ito it's really just blood and vegetables, and there's crushed perilla seeds and other seasonings. So it's really, pero hindi siya malansa. There's walang lansa.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think more for the taste, more on the taste. It's for the texture that people eat it.
Yeah.
Kasi chewy siya because of the noodles.
Andre said nakakagutom. Erica said may plum wine. Merong plum wine.
Ayun, there's plum wine pala.
In Malate and in Makchang.
Makchang resto in Malate and in Pasay. Okay, guys.
Okay, guys, alam na saan pupunta.
Dami ko nang...
Susan is saying hi. Susan Kwan, ex-Mandarin.
Hi, yes. I worked with her in Mandarin Hotel.
Alright. Tapusin natin yung photos Ito, ano naman to? Puro pagkain.
Okay.
Winter na to, no?
Yeah.
Winter.
Wala akong ibang alam, food lang talaga. So this is joge kuwi. Joge is the Korean term for shellfish. So if you go to areas beside the sea or shorefront, you'll see a lot of restos selling fresh seafood. As in yung seafood, they're still in aquariums.
Yes.
Ito yung mga
when you order, when you order, they just shock they just open the clams and then ayan, i-grill mo na siya sa over uling and everything. So yeah, that's also one thing you can try when you come to Korea. Kasi I don't think a lot of people know about these kinds of food. Kasi
Oh,
what
pero
I
usually
noticed with
sa seaside lang yan, di ba? Seaside, mga seaside lang.
seaside, yeah, seaside, meron din naman sa cities. And they still have the seafood in the aquariums kahit nasa city. But kasi I
So,
noticed with Filipino tourists,
oh,
they usually come to Korea and then they eat the same food that they eat back in Manila.
yeah.
Oo nga,
So parang
tama.
That is
sayang, di ba?
yeah,
Parang,
yeah, yeah. Okay, so this was ikaw naka-winter outfit ka. So when was this?
yeah, this was February. I think it's winter. January, February. So this was winter.
Yeah.
Oo.
So
So
I
nakakakain pa
want
rin
to
ako sa
ask,
labas ng winter.
yeah, I want to ask kasi Koreans, they love the weather in Manila, di ba? Because they said the
Yeah.
winters there are very harsh. And so totoo ba 'yon?
Yeah,
They
it's
want to
true.
go to
It's
Manila
true.
because of okay. That's good.
It's
That's
true
good.
because yeah, it's true. It's true na malamig. It ang ano dito extreme yung weather dito sa Korea. It's super hot during the summer and then it's super cold naman during the winter. So, yeah, it's ang weird eh kasi parang Finland you would expect Finland to be colder kasi
Oo
the
nga.
temperatures reach like
Yeah.
negative 35 but for some reason it feels more cold during the winters here
I
versus
think
the winters in Finland.
because of the wind
Yeah, I
factor.
think it's because it's surrounded by the sea rin kasi.
Yeah. Because
So
I
yung
remember I had a costume disaster then. I was in Korea tapos the wind, naka-skirt lang ako tapos ang lamig-lamig. Tapos biglang
Nancy!
blow yung wind. Nakita lahat na aking legs, lahat wala akong cover. Ang lamig. That's why I cannot forget the cold of Korea. Never. That's
yeah,
just
super lamig talaga.
Ito
okay.
yung maraming fear factor, di ba? Yung mga raw squid, hindi
Yeah,
lang
yeah,
squid
they
eh.
actually
Octopus,
there's
raw octopus.
shellfish, octopus, and then squid. So they actually have a lot of raw food rin.
So kinakain mo yan? You like the
Yeah,
raw, like,
yeah, I love the raw food. I like raw seafood. Like the first time I had raw squid. I've never had raw squid before. And the first time I had it, it was in Korea. As in, buhay-buhay yung squid.
buhay,
Tapos
di ba? Oo, buhay na buhay.
they just kill it and then they serve it agad-agad. And it's
Ano yung sauce?
super
Ano yung
nice.
What's the sauce?
They dip it usually kasi 'di ba like for Japan or they dip it in soy sauce and wasabi. But
Oo.
in Korea, they dip it in what's called chojang, which is a mixture of Korean pepper paste, gochujang, and vinegar.
Oh,
Gochujang and
wow.
vinegar.
So
Wow.
yeah, gochujang and vinegar. So it's called chojang, and they usually dip their raw fish, raw seafood, or like steamed shrimps. So for seafood, yun ang dips talaga nila
Okay.
here.
Wait, Tiffany said present. Tiffany Perry. Mandali said,
Nice.
ang lamig nga dyan, sabi ni Yolanda. And Cheska said, you're
Mhm.
adventurous daw when you're...
Yeah, yeah. I think I consider myself very adventurous even when I was in my younger years. Parang hindi kasi ako takot na kumain ng mga bagong klase ng food. Because nga of my dad who was always very encouraging na we should try new kinds
So,
of
dapat ganun
food.
pala,
And,
no? Dapat
Yeah.
ganun, Nancy.
oo.
For the
Oo.
parents
Yeah.
out there. Tama
You
yun.
should start that with your children also.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually I do. My husband and I we try to my kids as young as they are, they eat raw fish. They
Mm-hmm.
eat, they eat whatever we eat, ganon. So
So, ano to?
so
Ano to? What is this? The next one.
this is also this is actually kopchang, which is the small intestines naman. Small intestines of the
Ihaw.
this one
Cow
naman
na-
is
cow.
cow. Yeah. It's cow naman. Beef.
How is it cooked?
Beef. It's just grilled on the table. Grilled on the table. And for this restaurant kasi it's marinated in a special sauce or something. And we just grill it on the table. I actually like going to restaurants na walang mga signage. So
Like
my
you used
husband
to
and
go-
I,
Very much like your
My
dad,
hus-
diba?
yeah. So my husband and I was very lucky to have married a guy who share the same interests.
Ang
That's
galing
Kasi
ah.
when we go out on dates, we try to look for, really old restaurants and kakain talaga kami doon. Yun ang
Paano mo
hobby
nalaman
namin.
yun during the long distance? Syempre hindi mo pa alam yun, di ba? During that time.
Well, well, we always talk about food. For some reason, we always talk about food. And he always, when he goes to a place, kahit long distance, when he goes to a place, he always takes videos, take pictures, tapos sinasabi niya sa akin yung name ng place, and then I try to research. So parang nadadagdagan din yung kaalaman ko tungkol sa food. Kasi nga, he teaches me din. He teaches me all about Korean culture and food. So,
how
so
nice.
ayan.
Actually, here in this photo, you look Korean.
Oo, you look Korean.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think, not a lot of people actually think na I'm a foreigner here. So,
Do you speak, you speak
so
fluent
parang
Korean?
nag-disguise.
Oo.
Well, I think more or less, I think I speak okay Korean naman.
Okay.
Sabi ni
I
Gigi,
think enough to get around.
lahat ng in-laws are into food. Buti na lang, di ba? Requirement sa family.
Oo, I think yun ang requirement namin. Kasi yung husband na ate ko ganun din. Mahilig din sa food.
Okay. And these are the kids.
Wow, how nice! How cute!
Yeah, my
The little
kids,
one is
my
so
kids.
cute. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
What
kasi, the
costume is that?
daycare, they require hanbok.
That's a national
Hanbok.
costume. Hanbok.
Yeah,
ganyan
it's
sila
the
pumasok sa
national
daycare.
costume.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
they go to daycare like that during during the big holidays. The daycare asks them to wear traditional clothes during special holidays.
Is English taught there as a subject?
Yes, it is, but they start teaching it I think from grade 3, onwards.
All right.
Pero sa daycare they have like play English ganon.
Mhm.
Nothing structural.
Okay. And I'm sure thank you for sharing the photos, no. I'm sure a lot of people are interested to know about your squid game, 'di ba? Mga food in the squid game. Maybe
Yeah.
well, first siguro ano ba tong we'll share ito yung isang challenge, 'di ba? I'll share your Facebook page.
Episode yan.
Yeah, maybe can you explain this, what it is, and what's a cultural aspect?
Okay, so this is what is popularly known nowadays as talgona. It's actually just basically sugar and baking soda. Made into a candy. Before kasi talgona was actually originally not made from granulated sugar, but it was made out of glucose cubes. So they had
Actually, it's
glucose
like
cubes before.
honey cake.
Yeah, parang honeycomb.
Yeah.
Honeycomb, yeah.
Honeycomb.
So they used glucose cubes before, pero they found out that the glucose cubes wasn't good for storing kasi konting humidity lang inaamag na agad.
Yeah.
And it was twice as expensive as sugar. So this was before the 1950s pa ha. And then, so eventually, parang it naturally died down kasi nga, it was too expensive for people to buy. And then they changed it to using granulated sugar in the 1950s. Kasi nga, sugar was cheaper. And talgona actually is the name of the mixture itself. So, kahit hindi pa siya na-shape, yung parang caramel niya, the caramel itself is called talgona. And it's called talgona because the Korean term for sweet is talda. And talgona means talda. So talgona means in English it translates to it's sweet. So talgona. So it's sweet. So kaya siya naging talgona. And so yun yung name ng caramel. And when you shape it when you flatten it and stamp yung mga shapes, the name actually is popki. Popki. So a lot of people know it to be popki. Yun yung name niya talaga. But nowadays, kasi they interchange it na. So I don't think it matters if you call it popki or talgona. But yun yung cultural, yung historical background niya.
Okay, you in the old folks, they say it's tira-tira in Tagalog.
Yeah. Parang ganon. Oo, parang ganon.
They said it's called honeycomb. Honeycomb candy.
Yeah, honeycomb. Yeah.
But you know,
so madali lang siya gawin sa bahay.
Yeah, Ajumma, actually there are some bakeries already that make dalgona cake in Manila. And it's really good.
Yeah.
Honey cake, they call it.
I actually love honey cake, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually like honey cake talaga. It's nice. And 'di ba nauso yung talgona coffee last year? Was it last year? Or was it last year? And it's actually kasi it's called talgona coffee. It's called talgona coffee not because it has talgona in it, but because the foam that you make from mixing the coffee looks like talgona. That's why it's called talgona coffee. Okay. So some people think kasi na may talgona kaya tinawag na talgona coffee, but it's not. It's just because when you whip the foam, it looks like a whipped talgona. So that's why it's called talgona coffee.
Okay.
And then, di ba sa Squid Game, meron yung ramyeon ba yun? Yung dried lang, binuksan niya lang.
Yeah.
Is that usually...
That's actually it's a popular Korean snack. My husband said when he was younger, syempre walang pera, walang allowance. If the kids hang out and, one of them would buy, they would pull their money together and they would buy a pack of ramyeon. Just ramyeon, any kind of ramyeon, but usually it's Shin ramyeon. They would buy a pack of ramen and they would dudurugin nila muna bago buksan. Then they'd open it and they'd pour the soup packet into the bag itself and then they shake it. And that's actually called pushigi. Pushigi. It's called pushigi and they eat it like that. Snacks lang. Ganun. So sometimes pulutan, sometimes snack, ganon. We also do it at home actually kapag wala nang pulutan na iba. Yeah.
I'm sure
so
a lot of people would go to Korea to do that.
Kahit sa bahay pwede nang gawin eh.
Cheska said, this is why I love following her page. So maybe can we talk about your page? Paano nagsimula tong love, Ajumma? This is during the pandemic, no? I guess.
Yeah, this is actually it was last year. I think during the second half of the first year of the pandemic, parang doon nag-start yung the first season ng lockdown sa Philippines.
Yes.
There parang nagkaroon ng mga food groups on Facebook where people would share their, lockdown meals, lockdown cooking. And I'd see my friends post and share about these groups. Sabi ko, parang gusto kong join. Typical bandwagoner. Sabi ko, parang gusto kong sumali. Parang gusto kong makisali. Kasi nga, nakakamiss din kasi mag-interact with Pinoys. So I tried to join. And then, at first, I tried to share, just whatever I cooked at home, my side dishes, or whatever snacks na nakita ko or nakain ko sa labas. And I post it and I share it on the groups. And then that's where it started. Siguro after 1 year of sharing, tsaka ko lang na-realize na, pwede pala ako gumawa ng page or YouTube. I can make a channel or a page where I can share my food experiences, my food finds, and whatever I know about Korean food. So that's how it started.
And you have a big following now.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if I could call it big, but yeah. Thankful ako na may nagbabasa pala talaga.
Ayan,
kasi sometimes
online.
Kasi at first some people were telling, syempre may mga nega rin kasi talaga na dami-dami ko daw sinasabi, ganon. Parang it's parang sobrang haba kasi ako magsulat, to be honest, kasi I like to write about, the things that I know. I want the information out there. O syempre may mga nega na sabi, haba-haba naman ang sinasabi, dami sinasabi, ganun. And then you can skip naman, di ba, if you don't want to read. If you don't want to read, you can skip naman. But yeah, so So that's how I started. And now here we are today. Here we are today, guesting here in our awesome planet. Who would have known?
So how is it living in Korea? Because a lot of people just look at Korean drama, di ba?
Yeah,
Version
yeah,
of a
yeah.
Korean life.
Version
But
of
ikaw,
Korean version of
you're
Korean life.
in Korea, your last name is Park.
Yes.
So and you love food, which is our kind of thing also. And how's it
Yeah.
like? And then ano ba dapat yung mga food na when travel permits that we should try in Korea?
Well, life in Korea is basically life like everywhere else. Parang it's just normal except that you just have a Korean background, ganon. But it's same. People are busy. I think more sa Pinas, people are very busy here. We have a faster lifestyle. Kasi tayo Pinoy, chill lang tayo, chill,
Oo.
ganon. Kahit wala na tayong pera, chill pa rin tayo, chill, ganon.
Tama.
Pero sa kanila
Tama.
kasi, takot silang magutom. Takot silang maging mahirap because
Okay.
of what they experience in their history.
Yes.
So yung mga naka-experience ng gutom and war, sila yung generation na kahit nauugod-ugod sila, they will still get up every morning to work. So ganun yung
Mm.
culture. There's a culture of preparedness. So lagi silang thinking in advance. So kaya sila sobrang busy, hindi sila nagpapahinga kasi nga lagi nila iniisip na I have to do this for the future, ganun. So I think that's the main difference sa life here and life in the Philippines. Yung cultural difference talaga, it's nafe-feel ko kasi sometimes asawa ko sasabihin niya, grabe, chill pa rin, ganun. Chill pa rin. Parang feeling ko, gugunaw na yung mundo, chill ka pa rin dyan. Sabi ko,
How are
sabi ko,
Korean
well,
women? Sorry.
well, Korean women naman, they're also very, sila, they like to keep up with Korean standards. Parang, ang dami kasing societal, yung mga untold rules na this is how you have to be as a Korean woman. And it's hard. I think being a woman in Korea is very hard.
Why?
Even
Baka
until
dapat
now.
hindi nagtatrabaho. Ganun ba yun?
Kasi Korea kasi is a very paternal society even before. So until now parang women are still supposed to stay home. You're supposed to take care of the kids. You're supposed to cook for your husband. Yung pagsilbihan mo yung asawa mo, ganun. So may backlash sa mga babaeng nag-work.
Do
So they
Korean
get
women
different
also,
treat.
sorry. Do Korean women also watch Korean novela or pang
Of
Pilipino?
course. Of
Really?
course.
Oh.
Of course. Yung mga Korean women dito, pag tulog na yung mga anak nila, ano na yan, TV.
Appear.
Then they
Wow.
watch replays and then, they post on forums, cafes, and they talk about the drama that they watch. Kahit saan sa mundo, I think it's all the same.
Oo.
Do they also like BTS?
Ay, dami ring army dito.
Marami ring army.
Grabe yung fandom dito sa Korea. So, I think before pa nagkaroon ng fandom sa Pinas, Korea has one of siguro same with Japan. Grabe yung fandom nila dito. They will protect their idols to their death. Ganong levels.
I wanted to ask, actually, sabi nga alaga ng bata palagi, no? Sabi ni Amanda. But I think Korea is famous for getting their kids talagang study until late at night.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
for the games, diba? Online games. Was it like,
Yeah.
the kids? Ano ba totoo for the kids? Talagang
Well,
work din yung mga kids?
I think, personal opinion, I think the kids are, well, nowadays, it's not so, but siguro, let's go 10 years, 5 years back. I think kids are a little bit overworked. Overtired. Kasi, at a young age, they are asked to go to what you call like hagwons or academies. So as young as 6 years old, nag-a-academy na yan. So after daycare or after kindergarten, they go to academies. Like some, they enroll na their kids in English, or they enroll in math, or extracurriculars like taekwondo or ballet or arts or whatever. So ganun sila ka-early nagsa-start. And as they grow older, padami, dumadami yung amount ng academies na ina-attendan nila. So like for grade school, may mga grade school kids, they get home mga late na mga 9 p.m.
Wow.
because marami silang academies na
Oo,
ina-attendan.
they're famous for the 9 p.m. ang overwork kids.
Oh, uwian, tas they wake up early. So medyo competitive yung academic environment dito. Kasi sa kanila, the degree matters eh. Where you graduate matters. So if you go to an Ivy League school, then you will get more jobs. Ganun.
Talaga.
So,
and
so
that's
yung
why
standards
also, diba?
nila talaga mataas.
But is that true also that the mental health issue is a little higher also?
Yes.
Suicide numbers are high also. Diba?
I guess.
Mental issues are actually an issue nowadays here. Kasi nga, it isn't addressed eh. It isn't addressed properly. Kasi parang, wala stress lang yan. That's normal stress. Bakit ka
Chill lang. So, ikaw ang solusyon.
Parang stress lang yan, ganon. Oh. Tayo, di ba, parang, I think, generally, we may have a lower suicide rate versus Korea. Kasi sa kanila, yung image, reputation, it matters eh. So, if na-taint yung reputation mo, a lot of people try to resort to suicide as a, save face na lang, ganun.
Maybe that's why Korean novellas are like an opium or a, coping mechanism.
I think baka.
I also noticed that a lot of the men smoke a lot. Smoking.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's because of stress.
Yeah.
It's because of stress. I think primarily it's because of stress. Kasi Korean men, they have the biggest responsibility. Parang sa kanila naka sa kanila yung kailangan sila take responsibility for the entire family and everything. So it's really hard because Koreans don't work typical 9 to 5 jobs. Korean working hours are usually 12 hours a day.
Wow.
And they work overtimes pag weekend. Like sa husband ko, he works in the restaurant industry. So 6 days a week yon. No holidays. And it's hard.
So Diane, it's an honor watching Ajumma with you. So kilala ka talaga sa Ajumma. And
people know me
as Ajumma. May tanong
yung sinabi ni Amanda. Ano yan? Linis luto. Amanda, wag ka pumayag.
Linis and luto. Linis luto. And then tutor.
It's yan yung typical life.
May tanong si Renz. So Renz is a chef now based in Nueva Vizcaya. He has been making kimchi using Filipino veggies. Meron bang the kimchi can be done with other vegetables or any tips on making
yes. Well, I think basically anything can be made into kimchi. Like kimchi naman kasi I think it's not just for cabbage. You can use radish, you can use cucumbers, you can use spring onions. Sometimes you also use fruit. They use like persimmons to make kimchi. Okay. And it's really different for each region. So, kung anong meron ka, I think you can make
any
kimchi.
Any tips on making kimchi at home? Ano bang importante
I think the most, I think sabi ko nga sa mga tao, parang there's no standard recipe for kimchi. I think for every person, it really has to match your taste sa panlasa mo. Kasi parang even if you follow yung pinakasikat na chef or pinakasikat na vlogger, sometimes when you taste, hindi ka naman nasasarapan, di ba? So it's important to get lang yung base. You have your base ingredients and taste as you go. And yung pinaka-important part of making kimchi kasi is brining and draining the vegetables. Kasi if you don't do it properly, then you might end up with kimchi that spoils and gets mold easily.
Can you explain how brining is done in kimchi?
Well, brining kasi there's actually several ways. Some just salt it with sea salt sa mga dahon and then they just leave it. And some they salt it and they still soak it in salted water. So iba-iba rin. Per family, iba-iba yung ways nila to
Ikaw, anong
brine.
style mo?
And iba-iba
Anong
rin
style?
yung... Ako, I just salt. Just salt. And then I leave it for a day, almost a day. So the moisture really gets removed. And then I wash it several times and then leave it to drain again for a couple of hours before ko gamitin.
Before what?
Kasi mahabang proseso talaga eh. Mahabang proseso siya, like even just the brining and the draining will take a day or two na eh. So, and you have to make, you can make the sauce in advance. Mas
Wow.
maganda nga if you make it in advance kasi mas sumusuot yung lasa.
What's the sauce
So
made
basically,
of?
What's
it's
the sauce?
just Korean chili powder. You have ginger, onions, garlic, and then you use patis, fish sauce. And then there's also this salted shrimp that's called seujot. A lot of people also use that. And then, you add sugar. Some people don't add sugar. Some people use blended fruit like apples, pears,
Pears.
and then spring onions and radish. So yun, you just, taste as you go when you make the sauce. Usually yung sauce naman dapat medyo maalat. It's actually supposed to be a little bit salty. Kasi habang nagpo-ferment naman siya, nababawasan yung alat niya. So okay lang. Okay lang na medyo maalat yung sauce for the kimchi.
Ren said ripe mango and singkamas pwede naman. No?
Wow.
Yeah, singkamas actually is a really good substitute for radish.
Oo, singkamas.
Singkamas.
Didi said gusto niya extra sour, more fermented versus likes the crunchy side. And then so you make the sauce first and then you brine the vegetables and then mix them together and you put them importante
You
ba
put
kung
them in
saan
any... Well, it's important to have an airtight container. Yon, airtight container. And if you want to ferment your kimchi, if you make a big batch, okay lang siya na matagal siya sa ref. Na ilagay agad sa ref kung madami naman. Kasi you're not gonna eat it all at the same time naman. But if you're making a small batch, and if you want to eat it agad, I suggest you leave it out in room temperature for a day or two. Depending on the weather. So that it ferments faster.
And it's healthier, di ba? Fermented food is always healthier.
Yeah, because when kimchi becomes ripe, it actually has the highest amount of probiotics.
Wow. So, and how many days usually to ferment?
Usually depende sa weather. If you have, wag naman in direct sunlight, but if medyo room temp, siguro like mga 2 to 3 days. 2 to 3 days to just a little bit fermented para lang makain. But for us, we store ours kasi kapag hindi ako gumagawa, we just order kimchi and we store it in the ref for months. 4 months. So okay lang siya sa ref for months as long as it's stored properly.
When it comes naman to Filipino food, what have you introduced to your family?
Yes.
Adobo is a mainstay. Adobo is a mainstay. And there's tapa, tocino, and then daing na hindi bangus mackerel kasi walang bangus.
Wow.
So daing na mackerel. Oo, daing na mackerel. Kasi yun yung bangus, yun yung parang galunggong nila dito. Mura lang kasi yung mackerel. So yung mga simple food lang, and then I try to cook Pinoy spaghetti, yung mga ganon. Pinoy spaghetti, and then mga macaroni soup.
May Jollibee na
well, it's a hit and miss eh. Wala pa.
Walang Jollibee.
Walang Jollibee. It's Loteria. The local fast food is Loteria.
Wait,
pero may Filipino restaurant dyan.
Marami din naman. Marami. Filipino restaurants. And there's actually in Seoul, there's a Filipino Sunday market in Ihwa University, near the Ihwa station. There's a Filipino Sunday market. So nagbebenta sila Pinoy food and things.
Sabi ni Jobeng, name mo daw, Chef Ajumma, Tere Park. Yan ang
kasama ko sa work sa Mandarin. Mga
And then
kasama ko sa
Ren
Mandarin.
said cleanliness is very important sa fermented food. Okay.
Of course.
Um,
Kasi if
and
you're not,
then and of
mapanis
course
talaga siya agad.
McDo lang ang meron sa Korea. Now
Mm.
may tanong si Trixie but so ang tanong ni Trixie, does Korea have a bread culture?
Well, now there
Ano yung
is. Now there is. I think
pero
lately
traditionally
lang.
wala.
Well, may mga bread. Regionally din, there's different kinds of bread. Very similar actually yung breads nila with Japanese bread.
Yeah.
They use a lot of red beans or white beans. They use a lot of yung cream, buttercream, and then a lot of yung mga what do you call a custard. Yeah, and donuts, a lot of donuts.
Kasi di ba
Donuts.
like Tour Le Jour, Tour Le Jour, yung
Yeah,
that
Tuledger
is
is a
very
franchise
fancy.
naman.
Yeah. So fancy.
Yeah, but if you come to Korea, it's nice to not go to the franchises. It's one tip that I would give you is not go to the franchises kasi there's better food out there. Better bread, better food, and avoid the tourist traps.
Now, my question, Tere, is Koreans are the number one tourist in the Philippines. What's about the
Yeah.
Filipino culture? What is it about the beaches? Is it about the food? Why did your husband love Filipina, for example? What is it about
I
our
think
culture that
it's
we love?
it's the chill vibe. It's something that they don't have here kasi. When they go to the Philippines, they feel like parang I don't have to, do it fast. No one is telling me, pali, 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 pali. No, hurry up, hurry up. No one is telling me to hurry up. I can just walk. Kahit yung paglalakad nila, ang bilis sa totoo lang.
Yeah.
Like, I can't keep up with my husband sometimes. So, bilis niya maglakad. Sabi ko, can you just slow down for a bit? Sabi niya, this is normal kaya. Parang ako, it's not normal. It's not normal. So, mabilis talaga sila kumilos. So, I think yung main nagustuhan nila sa Philippines is how people are very happy in general, no matter what happens. And then, yun nga, we're very chill. Like, even in the brink of distress, we are still, nasusunog na yung bahay ko. Yung nasusunog na yung bahay ko, wait lang. I have to gather my things, ganon. There's no panic kasi. It's different how people handle stress in the Philippines versus here. So I think that's the one thing that they love about the Philippines and the Filipinos.
Plus the rich Koreans find golf fees here there in the Philippines talaga.
It's cheap.
Super cheap.
It's cheap kasi.
Yeah,
It's super cheap to golf in the Philippines.
They can play maybe sa dami ng sasarap nila, they would play two games like 18 times 2, ilan yun? 36 holes.
36.
Because it's so cheap compared to the one in Korea.
It's cheap. If you play golf here, considered na medyo ka na, medyo may kaya. May kaya kasi it's an elite sports. Elite sport siya dito.
That's nice. Oh, that's good to know. Now, my question is about naman. What can we learn from Koreans? Kasi they were really able to promote, their culture, their food outside. What is it about the Korean culture that made that happen for them? That we Filipinos can learn from.
I think it's because basically Koreans love their nation. I think it stems from there. Compared to the Filipinos, Koreans have this, they just love Korea so much. They love Korea so much that they take care of their cultures. They preserve what they can preserve. And then, magaling talaga sila mag-market din eh. They have these dramas and a lot of venues to market their food. Sa atin kasi parang hirap kasi yung Philippine drama naman natin wala naman masyadong aside from the mga commercials na product placings na nasa drama, there's not much showing culture and history and those things. And Koreans, they make variety shows about food, they make variety shows about history, they make dramas about history, dramas about food. So everything revolving around their culture, meron sila. So I think that's what we can learn from them.
So
Na baka naman, tayo naman.
my question now is, what is now your culinary DNA? Is it
Yes.
Phil Korean, Korean Filipino? Is it
Or Phil Korean, Scandinavian. Ano ba?
yeah? What is it now? How would
I
you
think
describe it?
my culinary DNA is still rooted in my Filipino culture. But of course, since I live in Korea and I have a Korean husband and Korean kids, I have to embrace what my family is experiencing. So
Of
I can raise my kids better. But Filipino culture is always, it's yung may inuuwian ka. So in times of loneliness, in times of sadness, times of distress, it's something that I find comfort in. So kumbaga addition na lang yung Korean DNA, but I'm still 100% Filipino by
Okay. Now,
heart and by
Mabuhay.
nice.
What's next?
Galing. Ito. Magandang tanong ni Renz. Siyempre, ito, laging chef ang ano. What is the biggest food trends during the pandemic sa Korea? Correct. Yeah. Buti, tinanong mo.
Natatawa kasi ako sa mga Koreans lately. They're just going wild with all these flavors. Sabi nga ng mga tao, parang medyo OA na ata.
Like
Parang,
what? Like what?
Koreans are very fearless when it comes to experimenting with food. Like recently, they had soju, mint choco soju.
Yeah.
They had a mint choco flavored soju. And then, basta pag may nausong flavor kasi sa kanila, lahat ng pagkain, all the snacks, all the food has to have that flavor in it. So, pati chicken, may mint choco chicken, and then there's basta everything, like nauso yung honey butter, everything honey butter. Nauso yung, and now they have this chicken na may gummy jellies in the chicken. Yeah, there's a chicken that has na may kasamang mga gummies, mga gummy bears ganon. And they're just not afraid to go and test the waters. So nakakabilib rin talaga kasi nga and people are actually buying and eating it. So I think yun sa kanila. Sa kanila ganun eh. If you go out there and experiment, it just becomes like the biggest trend.
You should cover that in your Facebook page also. Yung mga trends na
ganito. Yeah. Yung mga trends na ganito.
Yeah, I want to see if you have a photo of the chicken with the jelly. Oh my gosh. Yung jelly.
I can
Facebook
find.
page mo ba yan?
Wala. I just saw it kasi in one of the pages that I follow. And I was really surprised na meron. But
so, ang Squid Game popular din sa Korea, I guess. Ay, nawala siya. Wait.
Wala. Come back! Come back, Ajumma!
Galing Nancy, no? I mean, it's really amazing to know the story.
Saan na si Ajumma? Nakado. Ajumma. Well, kasi, even our friend who is 70 years old, idol niya si BTS. Ang t-shirts na sinusuot niya BTS. The whole day BTS. Korean novela, lahat yan. So when the question you asked us, how did Korea get into the Filipino landscape? I think it's because the foods are colorful. There he is. Yeah, what happened?
Nawala ako bigla. Pero I'll try to find it and I'll post it in the page.
Yeah.
But there's just talaga mga jellies. There's jellies talaga. And I was a little bit surprised. But I guess kasi matamis and sweet and salty siguro kaya naisip nila nalagyan ng jelly. But yeah, and because it's also autumn, so everything pumpkin and everything sweet potato. So everything sweet potato, everything pumpkin.
Also, that's observed there also, like that, like America, yung mga Halloween, pumpkin.
Yeah, sumasabay din naman sila sa uso, like pumpkin spice latte, mga ganon. So we have pumpkin coffee, peanut coffee, sweet potato coffee, yung mga ganon. So So it's nice to see yung changing seasons kasi nag-iiba rin yung food trends with the
Iba na
seasons.
yung food sila. Oo,
Very.
Mm-mm.
for
So
I learned
anyway,
nakakatuwa.
so much in
ako
our.
rin nga. Soraya Trino said, Aja, Aja, Ajumma.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Vincent said, hello, Tere, congrats. Enjoy watching your program.
Thank
Regards.
you.
I actually really learned also a lot. Any final question, Nancy? Before we
Actually, kulang pa nga ang time
kulang nga.
natin eh.
Oo nga.
Yeah. So let's say now the holidays are coming. What is a typical Korean family? May
Oo,
Christmas ba
correct.
dyan? May Christmas ba
Oh,
kayo?
There's
walang,
no Christmas.
there's no
Yung
Christmas in
Christmas
Korea.
kasi dito is yung Christmas dito parang Valentine's.
Okay.
It's
Pero,
for couples. It's for couples.
so what happens during December?
Oo, paano yung Christian community in
Oo.
Korea? Ano ba nangyari?
Well, I go to Catholic church din kasi. So we have simbang gabi. Well, not simbang gabi, it's just a midnight mass. Midnight mass before Christmas. So meron
Yeah.
namang Christmas Eve mass. And then, there's an international community sa church, yung mga foreigners na Catholics. And yung mga Pinoy community din dito kasi, yan, number one sila sa mga Christmas party.
Okay.
Sila number one nag-organize sa mga Christmas party, sa mga
And what are
events,
the
mga
ulams?
organization.
Oo, anong mga
Well,
celebration ulam in Korea?
well, sa Korean household naman, usually talaga, there has to be meat. Yung mga, yan, beef. Beef kasi super expensive.
Yes.
So, pag mga parties, holidays, laging may beef. And then there's, of course, there's alcohol. And nagsisplurge talaga sila when there's holidays. They buy expensive food. Pero for Filipinos naman, typical, para ka lang nasa Pinas, yung mga Pinay dito. Para ka lang nasa Pinas, they have, spaghetti, may mga barbecue, ganon. So, nakakatuwa rin panoorin yung mga Pinoy dito. Parang hindi sila umalis ng Pinas. Kasi very Filipino pa rin ang pag-celebrate nila ng Christmas.
Okay.
Alright. Ang galing Amanda said, congrats Tere again. And of course, Marinong Cusinero watching from Florida said, si Sandara Park ba
Wow!
yan? Ah,
Wow! Wow! Wow naman.
pwede.
Kailangan na magpa-check up ni Kuya.
Korean,
Nagbabalitaan ba nila dyan nung yung one of the Koreans naging ina-associate kay President Pinoy noon? Di ba? There was one.
Yeah. I think it was in the news. It was in the news. It was in the news, I think, nung time na yun.
Alright.
Ako naman, final question ko lang. Travel will open up maybe next year or a couple of months. What's a good tip for people traveling to Korea or planning a trip to Korea? Kasi usually, Seoul lang nga di ba? And then they get into the
Seoul.
Korean parang Korean drama trail. Pero
Korean drama trail.
Paano ba for people visiting?
If you want to go the food route, I suggest do your research before you come. And then if you can find a Korean friend to help you map your food trip, it's better. Kasi a lot of Filipinos kasi when they go to Korea, they usually Google. And when you search in Google, the only blogs that will come up are actually written by foreigners then. Okay. So parang you don't get the living, the traveling like eating like a local adventure. Kasi nga, you're just going to places that other foreigners have been to. So if you can find a Korean friend to help you, or you can ask me where I can recommend like to eat or anything. I can search for you kung saan ka, and then I can search kung saan yung mga best local places to eat, yung mga matagal ng bukas na mga restaurants or hole in the wall places. And then that's one tip that I can give you. And avoid the tourist traps. Kasi aside from being expensive, the food is not as good as if you try to, go out of your comfort zone. And don't get afraid to get lost. Kasi hindi naman madali mawala sa Korea.
Okay.
Relatively safe ba ang Korea?
Yeah. Is it safe?
Yeah, it's relatively safe because there's CCTV everywhere and there are police stations everywhere. So it's relative safe kahit madaling araw lumabas, okay lang. Just avoid siguro yung mga super mga eskinita. But if you're yung mga big roads, CCTVs are everywhere. So
Mhm. Is
nothing
there
much
a
to worry
culinary
about.
center ba sa Korea? Is there a culinary capital? Or
There
wala?
is
Seoul na yun?
there's a culinary capital. I can't say it's a capital, but for foodies, it's actually one of the places to go. It's Jeonju.
Oh, yeah.
Jeonju. Jeonju. So there, yung ano doon, lahat ng tao
Jeonju.
doon daw magaling magluto. In Jeonju.
Jeonju.
So it's
Wow.
quite a travel from Seoul, but
Okay.
if you want to go to Korea and experience yung more traditional kinds of food, I suggest to drop by Jeonju siguro for kahit a few days. And of course, don't forget to visit your local markets o yung mga palengke. Yan.
Okay. So
That's
let's
where
Carmen said watching from Washington State.
Hi.
And I love Ajumma's recipes. And then Trixie, last question before we close. Any suggestions for a good Korean dish for Noche Buena or a Christmas party?
Noche Buena Christmas party. I guess
Ano bang
well something I like personally like doing during big occasions is bosam.
what is
Gul bosam. It's boiled pork with raw oysters.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's really good. It's really good. And oysters are in season during winter. So you just boil the pork in some soybean paste, garlic, leeks, onions, and then you just boil it until it's done, and then you just slice it, and then you eat it with raw oysters and lettuce, garlic, and kimchi. It's really good.
Wow.
It's really good.
All right. Ang galing, galing, galing. Congratulations. It's an honor getting to know you. At least meron na
Thank you.
kaming
It's an
kilala
honor
in
to
Korea.
be here. Yeah, hit me up if you come.
People love you, so you have to keep up whatever you are
Thank
doing.
you. Thank you to everyone for this opportunity.
Okay. And final message na lang, please invite them to watch you or follow your pages and
Yes.
message to them.
Can you say something in Korean also?
Oh, yes.
I want to hear.
Okay. 많은 시청자분들께서 그동안 제 페이지를 사랑해 주셔서 너무너무나 감사해요. 앞으로도 또 많이 사랑해 주세요.
What's that?
I said thank you to all the people who follow my page, and I'm very grateful for the chance to share information with you, and please continue to love my page also in the future. Yeah, that's what I said. Thank you so much.
Anton, we lost you.
Informative as
No,
always.
nawala.
Sorry. Congratulations, Tere. Keep safe.
Thank you so much.
I think your page will explode, no. So it's nice to get to know you as early as now. Wag mo lang kaming kakalimutan din.
Ay, grabe naman. Grabe naman.
Congratulations.
When you come to Korea, just let me know and I can, give you a food and historical tour siguro.
Yeah. Korea, Korean food is really one of the top also. In the same way, Filipinos love Korea. Korea love Filipinos. So, ang galing nung mix ng culture na yun. And we can definitely learn a lot from Korea. So, maraming salamat. Thank you,
Thank
to
you.
Didi, your sister, for introducing you.
Thank you.
Galing.
Yes.
Your
Thank
page.
you.
Okay, maraming salamat. Live an awesome life, guys. Nancy,
Thank
Didi.
you.
God is
Thank
good.
you.
Good evening. Bye.
Good evening. Can you do a short